All right. Hello. Nice to see everyone again. I see you three or you two, but I'm talking to the people who might be listening, watching, reading this. We're back. We missed a week. I didn't need to tell you that, but we did. I feel ashamed. I feel embarrassed, but it's good to be here again. Sitting in a new office, one that 𝗕𝗏 said is too plain, said it's too boring, and I'm also have a little bit of lack of light in this office, and so I've got a little ring light on. I feel a little dark. I feel a little Darth Vader-y kind of thing. A little, too much shade, too much shadow. So I'm sorry if I'm scaring anyone. I am a happy person, and I'm here today. My name is Tyler, CEO of 𝗕𝗏 𝗙𝗿, co-founder. Those big titles that you put on when you're a small company starting things, when really you're just a doer and doing many things at once. A lot of exciting stuff going on, I think, both from a technology side and also just from customer growth or our relationship with customers. Excited to talk a bit about that today, and also have a great discussion with you too. So maybe make a quick intro and we'll jump in.
Sure. This is Lauren, the old account at the 𝗕𝗏 𝗙𝗿. I am.
A tough start.
Yes, I'm tongue-tied already. A bit of a news junkie nowadays. It's kind of a bit difficult not to be paying attention. So curious if you guys want to chat about that, or if it's a bit too dark for a podcast. But
Okay. All right. 𝗕𝗏.
Hey, 𝗕𝗏, digital strategist here at 𝗕peak. Just been busy with doing and implementing things and experimenting. So that's been fun. Fun, busy week. Went by real quick. Can't believe it's the end of the week already.
It's like you talked about a lot earlier. It's just like when you're real focused and it's on a implementation or execution, and it's just flow state and it's done. The day is done. And someone I was listening to the other day who said, like, when you have a job maybe that you necessarily don't like, it's like there's always too much time in the day. When you have a career or you're doing tasks you love, it's like there's never enough time. Like at the end of every day, I'm like, wow, I just pick up my head. It's like it's 6 p.m. And I wish I had more time to do more, but I do not. So I guess it feels good with your alignment. I hope you don't, you guys aren't looking at the clock all day saying when it's 5 p.m. so I can check out. I sure know I don't feel that way. When I used to referee hockey, I used to have to ref games, and literally there was a clock mounted massively on the wall, but when there was a whistle, the clock would stop. So you like 20 minutes were gone by and you'd look up at the clock and it had only changed like a minute and a half because there'd been a bunch of breaks and stuff. And I remember the excruciating length of time that it felt like when I was doing that. It was also a sign to me I maybe shouldn't be doing this for the rest of my life. And also that sort of subjective experience of time that you have based on what you're doing, if you're enjoying it versus not enjoying it. It's very weird. Anyways, Lauren, I would like to address, what I think, you brought up here. I think, things can be dark in the world, but not necessarily doesn't mean you should be avoiding them. And, I know it's certainly on my mind. I know, most of the world is sort of thinking and sometimes watching and often with horror of some of the stuff that's going on right now. And when all that information is coming in and sort of stimulation and these things are happening, sometimes it is hard to focus on other things or, not get distracted. So Lauren, I'm not sure if you have any, thoughts on this in particular, or anything that you want to talk about in this idea.
Yeah, just thinking about like how, these catastrophes that happen like on the complete opposite side of the world can have reverberations like all throughout everybody's lives. And like even just like the industry too. The most obvious one is just the rising gas prices, the rising energy prices. And I'm just curious about, the people that we deal with, how much of an impact is this going to really have? I feel like a lot of our clients are all, 100% pretty much are just computer based, requiring large amounts of electricity to, process all of this data that's going through a business. And I'm curious to see, like, with the rising prices of energy there, does that really make a difference as far as like our processing as well? Will we see ourselves like a cost rising for just producing and like processing all the audio and video? Or is it kind of locked in? I'm curious about that. It seems like prices like all over the world are just changing. It's so tied to oil, really. Like food prices are going to go up. Pretty much like any sort of aspect of life is going to be changing from that. So I'm just curious if you think you guys will see any sort of changes in our own workflow from this as well. If maybe we'll see like less of this certain type of client coming in, or more so this type of client coming in. We work with a lot of healthcare, and maybe this will be a boon for healthcare as well. It's kind of shady to say like a boom where there's going to be more need for healthcare. But there will definitely be some sort of change going on there. So I'm just curious about if you guys been thinking about like how this is going to impact the business in this industry.
Nihal did not jump in, so I guess I'll say something of like, first of all, I actually haven't thought of the impact as much on a, say a base cost for our systems and how it's running, because, and maybe I'm actually not thinking about this properly, but when I'm thinking about, the cost of these prices, a lot of times I'm thinking about oil, gas, and in my way, I feel a little insulated in that, and maybe not rightfully so. That again, I'm sitting in my office, none of us are traveling, we're all working remotely. I feel grateful that I'm not like in my gas guzzling truck, having to drive, every day and do that. So in a way, I feel like we're very privileged and do have some de-risking mechanisms in our business and in our industry as a whole to handle this. And maybe not, obviously really sad things going on in the world, but there was a shift in the pandemic which led to virtualization. And with that virtualization actually accelerated adoption of technologies like ours, like, the Zoomification of the world, where then all these conversations are taking place there. And then large data sets of media recordings are adding up and people needing to do more with that. Like, I don't know if that's exactly what's going to happen, but if I'm having a vehicle, and two things seem to be happening, like I'll have a gas vehicle, so gas is too expensive, so I'm going to most likely avoid traveling if it's not absolutely necessary. And now what I'm reading about is that a lot of minerals used in EV components for clean car development are also, being tied up. And so now, even if I want to go green, there might be an impact on pricing that way. So I don't know. These are good questions, and it's also hard, right? It's like you like when you're looking at some of the stuff. Like, I mean, there's a lot going on in the world right now, but when we talk about, I mean, it's crazy to say, but like war and devastation, you also don't even like to think about it in the paradigm of business, to be honest. Like, I don't like to think about it that way. It's like there's bigger things at large going on in the world, and I hope that we can make it through and weather that storm and continue to grow and do things. But at the core level, it's just like I'm sad that they're suffering right now. So and I really struggled at the end of last month, which was like we send out this monthly update, and I'm like, does anyone even care about this right now? Like, how do I even share this information? How do we maybe rightfully so proudly talk about growth and the good things that we're doing when there's so much not going right in the world? So it's definitely been like a very delicate thing. I've seen companies try to address this in different ways. I think some really well, some maybe not as well. And we're just trying to do our best. And the last part was like, I had a sentence in that update email that I actually removed, which was like, in this time, our team is, at least I, and I think most of us are just trying to do like the best we can at our work and like what we love doing. And in one way that feels right. And in the other way, it feels like maybe we're not contributing enough to, larger issues that maybe do feel isolated because they're not located regionally to us, but will have an impact on us. And in the end are having an impact on humans, which we all are. So,
It's tough to find that line of how do you talk about I guess issues in the world without necessarily even saying the wrong thing. So I think what's that line? It's like, if you don't have anything useful to say, you're better off not saying anything. But then the flip side of that is kind of, is your silence like, but complicit with anything. But the way I view it from a business perspective, right? And I know a lot of tech companies or a lot of companies in general sometimes get backlash for this. Oh, you should take a political stance, right? Oh, your employees want you to take a political stance on issues. But I do think in many cases, there's so many roadblocks and hoops to jump through for large corporations to actually take any sort of meaningful stance that, like, at most they can do things like, okay, we're going to pull our services from this nation, right? But you can't expect like a Google to like denounce an entire nation, right? Or denounce a government. Like, that's not their place. And from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense for them. So same in our case, like, obviously we're a much smaller company, but we can obviously have our personal opinions. We can have our thoughts, and, you know, we're entitled to be who we want to be in our private circles. But sometimes it begs the question of, you know, as a company, where and when is it meaningful to, you know, take a stance without it being performative, right? Because I think you also end up falling into that trap sometimes where there's so many companies that have just hopped on this bandwagon, right? Like, well, one thing that I've found, for example, that's kind of gross, right, is now there's a lot of like merchandise stores, let's say, that have popped up selling, oh, you know, like, we stand with Ukraine merch, but none of the proceeds go towards like Ukrainian war efforts or like, you know, like first aid or whatever it is. And it's just, you never want to end up in a position where you might end up just contributing to, you know, the senseless capitalism, essentially. So specifically to our business, I guess since a lot of our business is more Western focused, and even where our servers, a lot of the tools we use are kind of US based or Europe based, you know, maybe Western Europe, I feel like we haven't really seen much disruption or issues arise on that front. But the flip side, and an interesting thing, at least in the marketing world, is a lot of SEO tools and marketing tools are actually like Ukrainian based, or a lot of the largest SEO companies have like Ukrainian connections, right? Like some of the top technical SEOs in the world are like Ukrainian or like Russian or Belarusian, whatever it might be. So like 𝗬𝗏s, for example, like the founder is Ukrainian, right? And so one thing that I thought was interesting about their strategy, and part of why, you know, when we're kind of just testing around different platforms, why I thought it was neat is basically if you donated, let's say, you know, 2 months worth of 𝗬𝗏s subscription money to them, they'd extend your subscription by, I think, like twice that amount or something, right? Which I thought was like pretty, you know, a good way for you to take a stand as a company while still providing end value to, you know, your users and your community as a whole. So yeah, I just think, you know, overall, like, this ship there, sorry, I mean, there's you know, there's like awful people running in powerful positions, and the most we can do here is just try to live our best lives, and, you know, let these so-called world leaders take care of things or not take care of them, as is more often the case.
And Ukraine was becoming quite a development technical hub. And I mean, I've dealt with people in Ukraine before who are wonderful people and driven and motivated and care about their work that they do. And so I really do feel for it. And I agree on the part of, like, you know, the term for it, you know, related to environmental is like greenwashing, right? Where it's like, you know, I mean, companies have done this really good, like 10tree, obviously, right? Where you know, you buy a shirt, you plant 10 trees, but then there would be other companies that would say, hey, you know, 1% of whatever goes somewhere that you're not even sure in this idea. And I think, you know, many people are, you know, we're all in a way opportunists, but I think you know, try to take opportunities in a, you know, a respectful way, considering the situation and what's going on. So, yeah, I mean, everyone here is obviously following the situation, going to continue to follow it. And, you know, it's definitely interesting and difficult to sometimes operate just normally as bigger things go on in the world. And I think it's also a sign that we need to prepare for, like, growing up, I thought that their world was much more concrete to be honest, and you realize it's not. There's a lot of things that you just could never expect that just come out of nowhere. And so like resilience, the ability to adapt and learn and quickly adjust is really important. And obviously a very different thing, but we went through this in the start of COVID where I think, in 1 month we lost like 80% of our revenue. And I thought we were so strong because we were a digital agency. And then, you're dealing with YMCAs and hearing aid clinics and all these people who are location-based companies, and they call you and say, we have no idea what's going to happen now. We're shutting down. We have no revenue source. We don't know when we're going to come back. We can't honor this contract. There's nothing to advertise. We're not even existent. And that was a very scary time. And we made it through. We persevered and we actually grew, which I felt, if you can make it through some of those times, then you can make it through a lot of that, maybe the easier times. But I think we're, maybe not in that easier time. And just one last point of like, there's downstream effects for, I would say, startups and business. I would say specifically startups, which is now being talked about, which was last year, this very idea of like frothy valuations of companies, raising obscene amount of monies at obscene valuations with almost no friction. I wish I could say I had the same experience, but that's not what happened. Now there is the constricting of valuations, the constricting of money being invested, and much more scrutiny on the terms of investments. And so a company that just raised at 100 million valuation in today's world, depending how this world changes, their valuation is most likely $50 million now, realistically, if even that. And it's for them to actually raise again at a valuation that matches or exceeds is going to be very, very difficult. There are going to be a lot of people who lose money because of the recklessness of investing that had took place leading up to everything here. So, in a way, like, the smart founders have gotten they've got a war chest of money. They've got years. They will maneuver through this and they will figure out what to do. And we might see changes in how these companies then operate, obviously prioritizing revenue, really driving towards break even because, people they're pulling out of growth stocks and investing more in fundamentals too. So we might see a change. And in a way, I feel not really out of choice, but because of our sort of bootstrap nature and where we are today, we actually do have a little bit more resiliency and ability to adjust here. So that's sort of the one last thing that I've sort of noticed following, what's going on in sort of startups and technology specifically.
Yeah, a lot more freedom too, but it's just going to require just proper management and proper knowledge about where things are going to be going. We are a pretty young company. Well, youngish. I don't know. Would you guys really consider us to be startup anymore? Do you think we're kind of beyond that now?
No, yes, there's a year time. I guess you look at it like maturity of age, but then also maturity of stage. Startups can be startups for 10 years. It's more of like the level of scale that they hit. I don't know, if we agree, but it's like that. Again, it always seems just like $1 million ARR. Even then you're still a startup, but you're moving on to more of a
It's like a
growth
business.
stage.
Yeah,
exactly.
You're like a small business.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of investment is actually being routed into different places like climate tech, how can we make obviously green energy? How can we become energy independent? That's a huge conversation that's happening right now. And obviously people looking for quick solutions that are most likely not there about how do we make that happen. But we'll continue to see investment in climate tech and in energy independence, new forms of energy, and hopefully also trying to make the planet a healthy, more clean, sustainable place.
So especially in like the grant ecosystem now, it's very much focused on clean tech over and over. So it's interesting just to see like the shift of money based on, values and policies and culture and stuff like that.
I love seeing companies, like when I see a company that is even a big company, like I shouldn't name names because I'm not exactly sure, but they're like net zero or even net positive. And they've done that work to be that kind of business. Like that's incredible. And it was also, I watched a climate tech fund come and talk on This Week in Startups and said, in the end, when you're rallied around a mission, something as valuable and important as climate tech, growth of the business, obviously, I mean, growth in business is one thing, but the ability to attract talent or attract people who are passionate and talented. Like if you're trying to acquire, talent for a climate tech that is removing carbon from the atmosphere to change the world and save humanity, that's easier than someone who is building the next hyper targeted ad system. That's like that ship has sort of not sailed. Obviously it's not going away anytime soon, but people are looking to align work with passion, and if you can rally around those proper things, there's a lot of value there. So I think that is another signal that we'll see, especially as sometimes doom faces you. You sort of look and say, why am I doing this? If I'm, why am I doing something I don't care about, or if I might not even have that much time on this earth or on this planet, or that just this sort of, thought you have is that time is so valuable and we're so lucky to have it. Why would you be doing it on something that maybe doesn't drive you or make you feel passionate when you wake up every single day? Didn't know we were going to have this conversation. Lauren, interesting. Any other thoughts, I guess, specifically, on this? I know it's sort of a little bit wide ranging, but I think an important conversation to have.
Yeah, we'll see how things evolve over time. Well, keep an eye on things, but overall, I think that we're ourselves are in a good position. But that also means that we should probably be, a bit more emphatic towards people who aren't in a particularly great position after all this. Which actually kind of reminded me too. We worked with a UI UX firm, Cinnamon Agency, a time ago. Were they not in the Ukraine as well? Croatia.
They were
Never
Croatia,
mind.
yeah.
Okay, on the same sphere there. Hopefully, hopefully things don't spread too far into the Caucasus, I guess.
Yeah.
Hope so. You're good?
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
I guess maybe just part of this was like a conversation that I tried to spur the end of last week and then even at the start of this week, which actually are always sort of hard conversations, but I always think lead to good things, which is that there is, no matter where, no matter what, there's sort of this level of urgency that you have. Again, in the past, Lauren, you and I, and 𝗲𝗁 hasn't necessarily been a part of it, but I think we've talked about this maybe one time before, which was like, we were so close to running out of cash that it was terrifying. You know what I mean? Like I forget what it was, Lauren. I don't remember if you know the exact amount of days that it was, but we would have the like thing on the board of like death day. And like that was like in the office, right? And that was like a horrible way to do it. It was sort of this dark sense of humor, but it also made you prioritize and rally around the right things. And I'm still trying to, I don't know how to actually like sometimes deliver that message. Like it's something I'm trying to work on, which is like, hey guys, we're doing good. We're seeing growth right now, but we can always prioritize better. We can always make better decisions. We can always make this, if we're this smart, like even at a core level, if there's 4 of us, we're all smart, willing, capable, talented people. You can always do more, and not even that always do more doesn't mean like you work more hours. That means like you be more effective with the time that you have. And, again, I'm not very good at delivering that message. Sometimes I'm working through that, but what I like is that the team has always been very responsive to say, okay, if this is what we're then doing, what do I change, or how can I be more impactful? How can I, without that level of anxiety, more like a steady hand as a doctor in a surgery, make better decisions or act with precision to make the impact that's required. So I'm not sure if you guys have any thoughts on that, feedback, how that feels being on the other end of it. That'd be something I'm really interested in, and hopefully other people are too.
Well, I've been pretty used to this discussion from time to time. Maybe back in the day, saying Death Day was not the greatest thing to say, but it also put quite the fire under your butt. I'm curious to see how 𝗲𝗏 has been feeling about it, because I feel like we had brought up recently. That was probably like the first time 𝗲𝗏 had taken a scope of the financial health of the business, and it's something that I've always been used to. It always felt like our burn rate was fluctuating quite a bit. Our runway was a bit nail biting, and then we got a bit more space. It always seemed to be a topic of discussion for me, but just curious from 𝗕𝗏's perspective if it was a bit too much. Like, do you want to know about that? Is that important to you, or would you rather?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, there's always this trade-off you make when you join a smaller team or a smaller company, right? Where you're generally trading off whatever, like the ability to coast and, you know, possibly make more money at the start. But then, you know, in a smaller company, the last thing anyone wants really is, you know, out of the blue, like 1 week before, like, hey, everyone, like, this is our last week in business, right? So I think it's always nice to have that kind of transparency, right? Because obviously, like, bullying in public, but then also just from an internal communications perspective, right? I think it gives everyone a sense of awareness, right, of you know, everything that good that's happening, and then all the things that, you know, could send all that good hurtling towards zero. I do think that I feel like one thing that, and obviously, you know, like Tyler's like speaking to us as friends, and like, but when we have these conversations, I feel like let's say we have added team members, right? Or as the team grows, or people that might not have the chance to work as closely with you. Like, sometimes I think leaving out the personal element of it, right, I think is important, because then that way you're just focusing on, okay, here are the business, like, you know, like even if obviously there is personal liability on the line, I think it's like, it's always this question about, right, like, why would other people care, right? Like, what is the element that people care about? Because I feel like it's like a risky play to kind of, a lot of pressure sometimes for people, right? Like, where it's like, it's almost like, you need to do this for me, right? Like almost that mindset can develop, which I don't necessarily think is healthy, right? Like, no matter the situation, whether it's a relationship, whether it's like a partnership, whatever that is. So I think when we discuss these business metrics, sometimes I feel like it's like, okay, what is our just overall, you know, outlook for the business? What are the kind of defined KPIs we need to hit, and then how to go after them, and the kind of, I guess, bottom line is still important, but I feel like that is really something that how do I put this? Like, in a way, I feel like it's the bottom line is something that everyone should care about, but I don't think everyone will necessarily feel as strongly about, if that makes sense, where it's like, because, like, once again, there's not that sense of personal liability there, right? So it's like, I don't know if that's the strongest call to action versus, oh, here's how we get to, you know, have more equipment, have more blah, you know, like kind of flipping the switch instead of, oh, like it's D-Day. It's more like, how do we get to, you know, do more and be more, essentially. And I feel like maybe from a messaging perspective, switching to that, I think will probably, you know, allow you also to be a bit more positive when you do need to have these tougher conversations. Right?
Yeah.
So
it's probably a bit more productive to find motivation more so from like the positive of what could go right as opposed to what could go wrong. You'd probably be a bit more eager to get to work and a lot less stressed out, because then you're working and you're thinking, oh, the harder I work, the better I'm going to do, instead of I need to work harder or else bad things will happen.
Yeah, and also I think when you remove that layer of once again, depending on personal, right? Like we don't really have anyone else to compare to or like get their opinion about, but it's like, for people that might not necessarily resonate well with, you know, these stressful uncertainties, right? Like I feel like that could be a really big deterrent. Let's say you brought someone on and then you hit them with this news, and then now they're like, what have I done? Right? Instead of, oh, like, we're a healthy business, we're a growing business, but here are the realities of like a smaller business, right? So it's just like, here is one thing to keep in mind, but then here are all the things we're going to do to make sure that this isn't something you'll need to worry about, essentially, right? Which I think for the most part you did, right? And obviously there's a lot going on in life as well, which like I'm sure brings up these thoughts and like worries and like you know, you thinking about the future and like your future, which is important too, right? So yeah, but overall I think it was a good discussion in the sense that I think it gave everyone like a renewed sense of like, okay, if I can, you know, anything that I can have an impact with, if it helps, you know, prevent this worst case scenario, is a step in the positive direction, right? Anything that helps us all grow and like, you know, do more things and get more things, whatever it is, like is a positive, right? So as long as you're kind of making those steps forward, even if things don't pan out at the end, like you've at least, you know, you're kind of putting your best foot forward the entire way there, right? Instead of like worrying about the what if and then never actually taking steps to potentially not even have to go down that path. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
I appreciate you sharing. And I'm, you know what, those conversations too are, I would say, much different than they used to be, because all of us can see positive trajectory, you know what I mean, and feel the growth and feel that things are working. Whereas earlier versions of similar conversations were like, there's no one using this thing. We're not even sure if this thing is going to work. There, you know, like there is one person who logged in the last month, you know, so the definitely, like when you contrast, okay, business realities with, oh, we're all these things that we're doing are actually working and making an impact and a positive one, it becomes not a conflicting conversation, but something that you can sort of deal with in a more manageable way. And I think also, like, one thing I've learned is like, it's hard to it's hard to work in a stressful anxiety, you know, a stressful situation. And I know early when 𝗏𝗀𝗁 first started working, when we had this really, you know, tough conversation about like him not wanting to know, because all he wanted to focus on was good engineering. You know what I mean? Like that's all he cared about. He's like, the fact that I'm worried about, you know, where I'm going to be in a month is actually taking up so much of my cognitive processing that I can't even do my own coding well. And I do agree. I think there is that desire to protect people on the team, people that you care about, people who should be really just left to the work that they're doing and making sure that they're doing a good job. And I think that's why you see, again, like especially in like tech companies, like, you know, especially an engineer is just treated as like, you know, a god. It's like, put them in their room with their 19 monitors, don't touch them when they're in flow state, never, just let them focus on the problems that they're supposed to be solving. And I think that is a really valuable thing. I think, you know, the question, I guess, or I guess if, I don't know if that's right, but it's like, you shouldn't, if everyone is doing things right, those conversations realistically shouldn't even have to happen. You know what I mean? Like if we're actually doing the right decision making at all times. Now, of course, there are natural limitations of capabilities and market timing and all these things. But to me, you know, with, for example, how far along we are, how good, you know, we've got a great product, we've got a good team, we've got inbound channels and everything here. It's like, you know, if we're having this conversation right now, then we must not be doing something exactly right, or at least we can optimize and do a little better here. And so I think, again, you know, Neil, I really appreciate that feedback, because it's something I wrestle with, and it's hard, and it's like, especially like, again, that personal element. And it's actually been more personal to me in the past, because I just care about it so much. I'm passionate about it, but I'm also passionate, like I care about you guys. You know what I mean? I care about all of you guys who have taken risk, or, you know, when we went through a really tough time, Lauren basically like went contract and still helped us out, and then rejoined when we were able to have him. And that makes me emotional. You know what I mean? That I've been on a ride with, especially, I mean, Lauren and 𝗏𝗀𝗁 more than 3 years now. And that ride has not always been easy. And it's like when you invest so much time and love and care into something, you don't want to see that go. And so you know, not out of desperation, it's more of like an emotional call to action of like I care about this a lot. We care about this a lot. And, you know, there are good people at the core who really just want to see this work. And so how do we make this happen? Sometimes that does make me emotional, but I try better and better to do it. And I'm also trying to look at it as, I would say, a better business owner and entrepreneur of like, these are actually the steps we need to make the business healthy, to make sure that we can grow, to make sure that we can do all these things. And I think about these terrible situations like Peloton, right? Their stock crashes, their you know, new CEO comes in or whatever, it has to lay off 25% of the people. And how emotional that must be. I could not imagine, you know, looking at their point, whatever, 2,000 people and saying, you guys are done. And obviously, you know, you're talented people, you know that you're going to work, you know, they're going to find other roles and stuff like that. They're probably highly desired and highly wanted, but it's like what you're trying to avoid is, you know, negative consequences or outcomes for people who have dedicated time and energy to something. So yeah, that's all I have to say on that. I'm not sure any other thoughts on this. This two conversations we didn't know that were really going to happen. Any other thoughts?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, you know, success for this product is success for all of us, right? Like whatever business, if the business succeeds, when the business succeeds, like it's, I mean, we are succeeding, but, you know, succeeds more. It's like, I feel like that is something, you know, you can truly just look at it and be like, you know, that was something we did, right? Like it wasn't necessarily like all luck, or it wasn't necessarily just, you know, right time, right place, whatever it is. It was like, you know, there was time and effort put into this, right? Like that has led to this point. And then once you hit a point where you're satisfied with your journey, right? It's like, okay, do I continue on this journey, or is it like, you know, is it something else? Like, do we turn this into something else, turn this into something bigger? Are we happy at the stage? Like, what does that look like? Right? Because the way I view it, like, I guess maybe it's just the nature of the SaaS world, right? But for a lot of people, like running a, you know, 7-figure business is all they really need, right? Like you don't need to be the next unicorn to like live a good life, right? Like a good manageable life. But then sometimes it's like, within the SaaS space, is that really possible? Like just to kind of bootstrap yourself, let's say, to the point where you are at a, you know, 5 million, 6 million a year, and then do you stop, or do you actually have to start taking in more money? And actually, like, is growing, I think Vatsul had this conversation on one of our earlier podcasts too, right? Where it's like, if you're not growing, you're like, I think it was like you're dying, or like you're stagnating, something like that, right? And I feel like that's especially true within the software space, right? You can't really just stagnate unless your niche is like super low tech, right? And especially considering where we are, right? Like the kind of ML space, AI space, like you can't ever really stop improving, or you can't ever stop building something better. It's just, okay, how do you now get the means by which to keep developing and keep growing and, you know, keep moving forward? So some interesting things for us to think about and work around, right? And I think seeing some renewed focus at all levels too is like interesting to see. So
yeah, I mean, I think again, maybe clumsy execution on me at the start, but I loved what you said at the end of the week, which was like, I felt more focused than I have, you know, in a long time on these tasks. And again, we sort of banged out these, you know, what in the end, like, you know, if you're not, could probably take a couple of weeks to pull together, blah, blah, blah. And it's like 2 days later, we have live campaigns running, but, you know, a bunch of things that we won. So like that excites me. Again, I think that the entry to that needs to be much better. But overall, if every week you, at the end of the week, you said, oh, I felt more focused than I had felt, that means we did something right? And that means that if we all feel that way, then that's pretty damn exciting. That's how I know I feel when I come at the end of the week. I'm like, holy shit. You know, even Lauren's, you know, weekly reports where I'm like, oh, we're seeing growth every week. That makes me feel, optimistic going into the weekend. It makes me excited over the weekend, and it brings me back into the next week with more vigor, with more focus, all these things. And just like one other note that you said there, Neil, like I always knew that was true, but I remember one day, like 𝗏𝗀𝗀 was like, you're never going to be able to stop building this. You know what I mean? Like he just like sort of said, like, this is never over. And I was like, at that time, I forget where we were. And I'm like, but I'm paying so much money to build this. Like, I need to stop paying to build this. Like, it's so expensive. And it was just this sort of like, oh, you're right. Like, this will never end. This innovation will never end. You could have hundreds of people dedicate around this, and they could still find work to do. Still, there's optimizations. There's still things that could be improved. And that was like both a tough but also a beautiful moment of like, a desire for innovation and growth, and the necessity of that to actually be successful. And one other part that you said was like, what happens when a company, even if they don't necessarily want to grow, but say if you're hitting SaaS $6 million ARR a year, people are going to start throwing money at you. You know what I mean? Like that, we saw that with 𝗕𝗏𝗀. Like they like didn't even want necessarily to raise funding, but they were like, people gave us so much money at such good terms. It was irresponsible to say no. I hope that's the situation that we can one day get to. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think a lot of the mechanisms that we're now pulling and finding places to optimize are leading us to at least places of traction and numbers of this numbers don't lie mentality, that it's going to make any experiences to raise money, whether equity, if it's even debt on good terms, all these different ways, or even like what we're seeing now of like Pipe and all these companies like revenue-based financing. It makes that much easier and frictionless, because again, cash is the life, it's the lifeblood of every business. And I know we're still wrestling with here as a team is like, it's, to me, I think maybe you guys, I hope it's like, it feels pretty clear what levers we could pull to make a bigger impact, to see more growth, to do things right. And yet we don't necessarily have the resources or the talent to do it. And that is always a frustrating. And I know no matter what stage of the business, you always feel that way. And I need to learn to live with that, but it's also still makes me frustrated.
It provides you with a good goal to get those resources in order to get what you want to do exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And like Michal said, it's the software MRR part, right? Which was like, in a way, we sort of did bring this on ourselves by building sort of self-serve, no code application for, smaller businesses and solo entrepreneurs, et cetera, which is like, in one way, a dream has been fulfilled, which is like, someone comes, they sign up, they start paying for our account. Maybe they send us one message on intercom. We answer that question. They're happy. They go back to using the system. Like, that's a dream. You know what I mean? Like, that truly is a dream accomplished. That I didn't realize how hard it is, but I imagined my whole life not my whole life, but a long time since starting my entrepreneurship of like, is this even possible? Because when I was running 𝗕CSi, the agency, it's like everything I did was so hard. Everything was so custom. Everything was so manual. And I was like, there must be a better way. And I actually feel like there's a better way, but then there are sacrifices that you make that maybe you're going to see software growth month over month, but it's maybe not going to be $2,000 at a time, $5,000 at a time. So some of those, goals that you want to hit from a financial growth perspective don't come as quick, and you just need patience. But, again, you're faced with the realities of time and talent and all these things. That equation becomes sometimes difficult. And then you look over at, Nihal said, like an agency or something where it's like, they're pulling in millions of dollars a year because they're doing custom services. That would be fantastic right now to have that cash. Or, there's a big B2B business selling with an outbound channel where deals are $100,000 a year. And two of those then pay off that thing. But then I talk a conversation with them and they're like, we want product-led growth. So it's always grass is greener. It's a hilarious thing that you sort of work through and navigate with, but I'm proud to do it with you guys. I love doing it. And this has been a lot of fun, even these last weeks, even when you have sometimes conversations like that.
Yeah, they're fun to have. They're important conversations, and it really sends a shock to the system, but a good shock, really wakens you up.
Cold plunge. Any other thoughts? I know. Okay, so first of all, I have a call in 10 minutes, and you know me. I have drank, and you've seen me drink a whole entire smoothie and a lot of water today, so you know what's going to happen here. Anything to close this off or wrap this up? This was again. I don't think we talked basically to anything that we said we were going to, but overall, I think still a great conversation.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about any of those quickly? Anything that's on the tip of the tongue?
Maybe the Tyler, if you wanted to just quickly talk about the including excluding function and the Zoom integration and why we think those are like nice, powerful additions.
Bringing it back. I like it. That's what I'd be proud of you. Two things, I guess, that are coming here, which we're really excited about are, you know, we've talked about this in previous podcasts, but this idea of like custom categories. And when you come in to speak, you get two things. You get default categories, people, brands, locations that's automatically extracted from your text, audio, and video, and helps you sort of build a mental model around what took place in this conversation or unstructured text. And we found that was really valuable, but then people came to us with, I want to actually detect custom categories. I want to build out emotion or action items or things like that and include an account. So this is where custom categories came from. And one thing that we found is this mechanism of adding keywords or phrases that are connected to those categories is really valuable. And we'll demo this maybe with a screen share next week, but basically say you have a brand and that brand is not getting tech detected automatically from that system, from our system. You can add your brand as a keyword or key phrase in, and anytime moving forward, it will automatically find it. And you can also retroactively analyze all your media and pull that out. But then what we would have is our system sometimes detecting, say, a brand that wasn't actually a brand, or a person that wasn't actually a person. And it could just be, you know, the capitalization of a word that in that specific word, or the capitalization and position in the sentence indicated to our system that it was a brand, and it wasn't actually, or it was a person and it wasn't actually. So now with a single click, you can say exclude this from not just this individual note, but on a global basis. And what that actually allows you to do is, without any code, without any, you know, technical developers, this would usually be a big process of manual data cleaning and labeling. You are basically cleaning your own data set, your own curated library of insights. And, you know, it seems sort of like nerdy and technical and niche, but it actually has huge ramifications for people who are using our system and want to get the most accurate insights possible and do that as quickly as possible without big development time or talent or resources. And so it is very exciting. We will share a little bit more about that. And as 𝗏𝗲 said, like, how do we describe this in, you know, an accessible sort of, you know, way so people actually do understand the value? Because it, in a way, to me, it's actually a very novel system and a pretty complex functionality we've tried to make as easy as possible to enable something that wasn't really possible for most people in the past.
So if you were to give a quick kind of
don't force me to do this.
Example of how someone might use it, how would you maybe do that in like a minute pitch or a 30-second pitch?
So I upload interview, and there's this person named Jimmy Joe, and Jimmy Joe is then picked up as a brand because of just the categorization of our system automatically. What I can easily do is like click on this Jimmy Joe and say, this is not a brand. And I can then exclude it, not just from that interview, but any interview ever moving forward. So Jimmy Joe will never, ever show up as a brand again. And furthermore, I can say, you know what, Jimmy Joe is actually my friend. And I actually want to either put it as a person and label it specifically as a person, or I actually make my own category and say friend. And now in all my conversations or all my notes, I can automatically detect my friend Jimmy Joe in anything moving forward. Yeah. Okay. That was tough. Yeah, okay. I did my best. Yeah, that was tough. And Jimmy Joe was a terrible example, but that is it. And I know, you know, Neil, I know you had the experience. We've all had the experience, or we get the summaries of our own Zoom recordings where I'm like, that's not a person, or that's not a brand, and it's it's frustrating. And the fact that we can now X that out in seconds is amazing. And, I compare it again, which is not a good example. I know I'm coming up with time. It's like the negative keyword list in Google Ads, where it's like you're advertising on search keywords and terms, and then one comes in that you don't like, and you're like, I never want to advertise on that term again. So I'm going to throw it into a list, and I'll never have to worry about paying for that click again. This same function is now being enabled in your data analysis.
Awesome.
And Zoom, what's you're pushing me on the end. I have to pee, and you're still forcing me to do this. The Zoom integration process. I mean, this one I think is much more intuitive. We're in Zoom right now. At the end of this, I don't want to go manually upload this into Speak. Now, I don't have to do that right now because 𝗕𝗫𝗄𝗃 actually does it for me, and it's pretty beautiful. But in general, we are now going to be embedded with the native integration. All those recordings, again, we'll show a demo of this probably next week as it goes live. It's in the process of going live. It's quite a process to obviously build it, but then get approved. Vatsal's not here to talk about this. Vatsal, hope you're feeling better, buddy. But what's really exciting to me about Zoom is that if you click in Zoom, there's the apps, and you can sort of discover different apps. And so now, you'll be able to see Speak in that sidebar as an application on the Zoom marketplace. And, we did a little hack of it's titled Analyze and Transcribe with Speak AI. And so it should be near the top. It enables another layer of discovery for us. And then, hopefully people then can find something that not just allows them to transcribe, allows them to analyze frictionlessly, adopt that system, sign up, use it, and then any interview or any call, any conference moving forward that they're using with Zoom will automatically appear in Speak, be transcribed, analyzed, and we're now doing a lot of work to build summarizations that are even more valuable of those individual calls, but then also populate the Explore dashboard so you can get insights on a more specific basis and tag it. So if you're having a bunch of conversations with one person, you can start to see what you've talked about over time. And then lastly, give you very intuitive ways to share that in an interactive way that allows people to sort of intelligently navigate through that media and find the moments that matter. Yeah.
Awesome.
Ooh, it's too late. I did it. Okay. Thank you for, I think that is important, to talk about, and something we've been working on for a long time. And a lot of these things, again, seem to be culminations of work, where sometimes these things feel disjointed, but then it all comes together to make a use case or a workflow or a value creation pretty seamless. So anything from you guys before we close this out?
I think it's all pretty good. This is a very good chat. It's a good one.
I missed last week. I know it was, but we had a long conversation before. I'm like, we've been on the call for 2 hours already. Let's. I find that even though our conversation didn't necessarily revolve specifically around these topics, when you take a week to separate it, you have a little bit more inspiration coming into it, and you have a little bit more to talk about.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Okay. Thank you, everyone who tuned into this. We'll share it out. And you know what? I saw some stats on our website because we've got all them on podcasts now. So we're seeing some listens go up. So for anyone who's listening, appreciate very much. We appreciate you, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.